Right now on Morning News Now, harsh words from President Trump to the United Nations. The president criticizing the UN for what he called failures to stop global conflicts.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? All they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up.
Also, President Trump signaling a major shift in support for the war in Ukraine as he calls on Ukraine to fight and win back its territory. Plus, new information about an elaborate electronic system dismantled by the Secret Service that could have shut down New York City's cell phone system during this week's UN meeting. We'll have it all. Also this morning, disorder in the court after the man found guilty in an attempted assassination of President Trump attempts to stab himself moments after the verdict is read. The dramatic developments, the president's reaction, and what happens next. Plus, a warm welcome for late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel in his return to ABC's programming nearly a week after being pulled off the air. What he had to say about the comments that led to his show's suspension. And another reason to think before you drink, the new research that links alcohol use and cognitive decline. Aren't the studies that are like red wine's good for your heart more fun?
Yes, we definitely would prefer those instead, but we'll dig into that with Dr. Torres in a little bit. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your day with us. We're going to begin this Wednesday morning with President Trump back in Washington following his trip to the United Nations General Assembly. That was here in New York.
It was the first time he addressed the UN since his first term. The president was sharply critical of the UN, saying it had failed to end wars and address concerns over immigration. But hours after his speech, President Trump made a dramatic shift in his stance on Ukraine and its 3.5-year war with Russia. In a social media post, Mr. Trump suggested he believes Ukraine could win back its territory from Russia with the support of NATO, returning the country to its original borders. Over the summer, President Trump played a different tune. He said Ukraine needed to make territorial concessions to Russia as part of a possible peace deal. Speaking at the UN, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky outlined his meeting on the sidelines yesterday with President Trump.
We spoke about how to finally bring peace, and we discussed a few good ideas, and I hope they will work. And I'm grateful for this meeting, and we expect America's actions to push Russia toward peace. Moscow fears America and always pays attention to it.
NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba leads us off this hour, joins us from Washington. Monica, good morning. So President Trump, criticized allies, touted his administration's accomplishments while speaking to the General Assembly. At one point he said, quote, "Your countries are going to hell." Strong words there, but it's actually Mr. Trump's post on Truth Social that may be getting the most attention when it comes to Russia's war with Ukraine. Any insight into what's causing this shift we're seeing in the president's thinking?
And it was a notable shift. You're absolutely right, Joe. And what was also significant is that that post came after his speech to the United Nations General Assembly. It wasn't really a part of his remarks. He did touch on the war in Ukraine, of course, going more than 3.5 years now, and had this to say about Russia and the overall situation. We'll talk about what it means and then the shift on the other end.
Everyone thought Russia would win this war in 3 days, but it didn't work out that way. It was supposed to be just a quick little skirmish. It's not making Russia look good. It's making them look bad. No matter what happens from here on out, this was a war that should have never happened. It shows you what leadership is, what bad leadership can do to a country. The only question now is how many more lives will be needlessly lost on both sides.
And in that post that he wrote later on social media, he almost seemed to be washing his hands of this conflict, Joe and Savannah, saying, well, now it's up to these two countries to figure it out. But I can tell you that Ukraine was very happy with this development. They felt it was a very positive shift in tone, while the Kremlin is really dismissing it altogether.
Monica, while he was at the UN yesterday, there were a couple mishaps, and we heard a bit about them from the president. He had some teleprompter issues early on in his remarks, making a joke that the operator was going to be in trouble. An escalator, as you're seeing on your screen, it stopped working as soon as he and First Lady Melania Trump got on right as they entered the UN. How did any of these little things impact this moment on the world stage?
Well, the president was quick to bring them both up, and the fact that his teleprompter wasn't working for the beginning of the speech, he made pretty clear that he was upset about that, too. The UN actually did an inquiry into what may have happened there with the escalator, and according to a UN official, they say that it was actually a videographer on the president's team that went up ahead of the president and first lady that may have accidentally triggered a mechanism that would have stopped the escalator. But the White House, for its part, says that they are looking into this matter more seriously, and that they believe that there could have been some nefarious reason and that somebody could have done this on purpose. At least that's what the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt said, and she said they would be looking into it to see if there were any other updates possible.
Monica, we're also now a week away from a potential government shutdown. Democrats and Republicans not getting any closer to a resolution. I mean, President Trump took the step of abruptly canceling a planned meeting for Thursday with top Democratic leaders to discuss a deal. Why was it canceled? I mean, we've gone through this before, but does it feel like it's different this time trying to get a deal done?
Well, as we always get closer and closer to these government funding deadlines, it does seem like there's always a bit of a back and forth about how it could potentially be avoided. But the president did say he didn't want to meet with Democrats because of, quote, their own demands. And what Democrats are asking for here is a discussion about some of these Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, tax credits that are set to expire at the end of this year, at the end of 2025, that they want to have a conversation about extending and keeping. The president is, again, saying that that is not something he wants to talk about. But now there is, of course, going to be this question of then who owns the government shutdown if it indeed happens, with the president saying that maybe he's leaving the door open to meet with Democrats, again, if some of these demands are met, while Democrats, for their part, are saying that it's the president who is, quote, chickening out by scuttling this meeting, and that they argue he is going to own this shutdown that, again, would come in about 6 days or so.
All right. Monica, thank you so much.
While the UN meeting packed with world leaders was going on, the Secret Service said it dismantled a sophisticated network of electronic devices with the potential to shut down New York City's cell phone system. Agents discovered what you're seeing on your screen right now. This is more than 300 SIM card servers and 100,000 SIM cards at multiple locations. They also found 80 grams of cocaine, illegal firearms, computers, and other cell phones. The Secret Service said the devices could also be used for criminal activities, things like making anonymous assassination threats. NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has more.
In the shadow of a global gathering of world leaders at the United Nations, a major risk to an essential lifeline disrupted. Federal officials say a cache of electronics they seized with ties to unnamed foreign actors could have crippled cell service in the nation's largest city, jamming 911 calls, impeding emergency services response, and causing massive chaos.
This network had the potential to disable cell phone towers and essentially shut down the cellular network in New York City.
The U.S. Secret Service says a series of recent raids in the New York tri-state area led to the discovery of 100,000 SIM cards and 300 servers, able to overwhelm cell networks by generating mass calls, up to 30 million texts a minute. These photos show some of the electronics discovered in rented apartments within 35 miles of the UN. No arrests have been made.
Early analysis indicates cellular communications between foreign actors and individuals that are known to federal law enforcement.
This investigation began close to the White House, where law enforcement says high-level officials had been swatted this spring. Those anonymous calls that report false threats. Secret Service officials deployed what they call an elite unit that includes cyber experts that led to the discovery of these telecom farms. During these raids, authorities say they recovered illegal weapons, computers, phones, and cocaine, and said they do see connections to organized crime, maybe even cartels, plus that larger link to foreign government involvement.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. Well, let's get more on this with Jeffrey James. He's a retired assistant special agent in charge with the Secret Service. Jeffrey, good morning. So first off, let's just kind of talk about how this works. We heard a little bit about this from Kelly. These are called SIM farms that ultimately could have done this damage here. How does this work? How do they make mass calls and jam a system?
Well, I'll be first to tell you I'm not a cyber guy, but from what I understand, it just essentially overwhelms the system. And when it overwhelms the system with that volume of either calls or texts going out, it hijacks the signals coming from the towers and essentially just takes over the system. It overwhelms it in a couple of ways. One, so that these farms can be the only people communicating on that system, or they can just deliberately shut it down also.
The Secret Service also said these electronic devices, they could have been used for other criminal activities like conveying assassination threats to high-ranking officials, even espionage. So, I mean, given world leaders are here in New York for the UN General Assembly, do you think those are things investigators are going to dig into?
Absolutely. You know, we don't have enough time for me to list all the ways that this could be used for criminal activities, but just in the frame of the UN going on right now, it could be used to intercept classified and encrypted communications if it was part of an assassination plot. Again, multiple swatting incidents across New York would overwhelm the EMS and fire system and police system, and just the ability to make anonymous communications, if it is a plot among bad actors, is significant.
Even though at this point no wider plot has been uncovered, also no arrests have been made, Kelly did mention that authorities say they do see this possible connection to organized crime, even a potential larger link to foreign government involvement. With that in mind, how does the investigation proceed from here?
Well, it's going to take a while. So you mentioned earlier 300 servers and 100,000 SIM cards. It's going to take a long time to do forensic examinations on all those. And they should be very deliberate, and they should be very intentional about the investigation of these. But it's still going to move forward quickly with the attempt to identify the people who were in possession of all these. That part will happen pretty fast, and if they can get people behind bars quickly on that side, you'll see that happen quickly. All
right, Jeffrey, thanks for your expertise this morning.
After a dramatic two-week trial, a Florida jury found Ryan Ruth guilty of attempting to assassinate President Trump at one of his golf clubs just over a year ago. He was found guilty on all 5 federal counts, but the most dramatic moment came after the verdict was read, when Ruth tried to stab himself in the neck with a pen. NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist has the latest.
Just after Ryan Ruth was convicted of trying to assassinate President Trump at his West Palm Beach golf club, his daughter running beside the car authorities were transporting him in. All after inside court, Ruth attempted to stab himself in the neck with a pen. This court sketch showing that moment. NBC News producer Carmen Gonzalez witnessed the chaos in the courtroom.
As the jury was leaving, I looked over to him and I saw him doing this. I thought maybe he was having a seizure, but then I realized he had a pen and he was jabbing at his neck, trying to hurt himself.
Within seconds, she says, U.S. Marshals grabbed Ruth and took him away.
And the daughter started saying, Dad, don't, we love you.
A Florida jury deliberating for just 2 hours before convicting Ruth on all 5 counts, including attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate. Prosecutors in closing arguments saying a mountain of evidence showed one thing: Ruth wanted Donald Trump dead.
Shots fired, shots fired, shots fired. Individual in the bush with a gun.
Just 2 months after the assassination attempt in Butler, on September 15th last year, a Secret Service agent spotted the barrel of a semi-automatic rifle in the shrubbery outside Trump's golf club.
On the tree line, the individual was inside that tree line.
Authorities say Ruth had been lying in wait behind a fence for hours, undetected.
Straight back!
His arrest shown on this police body cam and this image of his gun. In court, Ruth represented himself in an often rambling presentation, arguing he did not have the character to kill, saying, if you don't have the cold heart to make it happen, is that intent? But prosecutors showed jurors a letter written by Ruth where he said, quote, "Dear world, this was an assassination attempt." President Trump reacting.
You can't let things like that happen. Nothing to do with me, but a president or even a person. You can't allow that to happen. And so justice was served.
The judge was very patient, even lenient with Ruth, giving him the same instructions several times. Despite seeming frustrated at different points, she ultimately will decide his punishment, and 2 of the charges carry a maximum of life in prison. Sentencing set for December 18th. Back to you.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos for more on this. So the jury needed 2 hours to deliberate. Any surprises here at all?
Yeah, the surprise is it took 2 hours, although I suspect they might have had trouble with, say, the assault on the federal officer because the evidence tended to show maybe that the officer fired first. That's the only thing I can think of. Otherwise, the note it sealed the deal. He was toast no matter what, whether or not he had an appointed defense attorney or whether or not he defended himself. Unfortunately for the court, a pro se defendant creates a lot of procedural problems. It's not the best for judicial efficiency, but I would venture a guess that the outcome would have been the same no matter whether Routh represented himself or F. Lee Bailey came back from the afterlife to defend him.
So Aaron mentioned this, him representing himself, often rambling, kind of chaotic. Is that something that a competent attorney could kind of seize on and use as grounds for an appeal? Do you see anything like that being able to happen here?
Not likely, because anytime a defendant chooses to go pro se, they are admonished on the record about 100 different ways that they're not going to be able to later on say they had ineffective assistance of counsel when they themselves were their counsel. There are a number of different colloquies. Ferretta hearing is one of them. You have to tell the defendant, look, you have a right to counsel. We can appoint counsel for you. You can have an attorney. It's not a good idea to represent yourself. You should really consider it. And it's some version of that. And the reason for that is clear. It's a terrible idea to represent yourself in court. People watch too much TV. They think mostly what we do is get up there and say words. And it's a little more complicated than that.
We know that. It's much more complicated. Aaron mentioned he's going to be sentenced in December. What are the factors the judge is going to consider here? Is this fairly straightforward? And what happened after the verdict was read yesterday with him trying to stab himself with the pen? Is that something that at all could be in the judge's mind when determining what to do here?
Well, if I'm the defense counsel and he doesn't have defense counsel, as you're preparing for sentencing, you really try to create a picture of the defendant as somebody who needs help, needs rehabilitation, and doesn't need a lengthy prison sentence. That's your best bet here. But if he's handling his own sentencing, that's going to be even worse. We always cover the trial. We don't spend a lot of time on sentencing. But in federal court, since virtually every case ends in a conviction, sentencing is arguably more important than the trial itself. But what happens next is the probation department will interview him. They'll prepare a pre-sentence investigation report. And then the prosecution will recommend a sentencing range and a sentence to the judge at the sentencing. And really, everyone who goes to trial gets a bit of a trial tax. I think the judge will probably, maybe the fact that he was annoying might factor in inner subconscious, but really, it should be pretty straightforward. And he's looking at a pretty lengthy prison sentence.
All right. Danny, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, Jimmy Kimmel Live is live again. The comedian was greeted with a standing ovation as he made his closely watched return to TV last night. He'd been off the air for nearly a week after ABC said it was suspending his show indefinitely for critical comments he made about Republicans after the murder of Charlie Kirk.
He opened the show with an emotional monologue, which started with, as I was saying, before I was interrupted. He then went on to make a tearful apology for the comment last week that kick-started this drama. But he balanced that with a fierce defense of free speech. Here are some highlights.
If you're just joining us, we are preempting your regularly scheduled encore episode of Celebrity Family Feud to bring you this special report. I'm happy to be here tonight with you. It was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Look, I never imagined I would be in a situation like this. I barely paid attention in school. But one thing I did learn from Lenny Bruce and George Carlin and Howard Stern is that a government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like is anti-American. That's anti-American. The president of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. This show is not important. What is important is that we get to live in a country that allows us to have a show like this. I've had the opportunity to meet and spend time with comedians and talk show hosts from countries like Russia, countries in the Middle East, who tell me they would get thrown in prison for making fun of those in power, and worse than being thrown in prison. They know how lucky we are here. There was a moment over the weekend, a very beautiful moment. I don't know if you saw this on Sunday. Erica Kirk, forgave the man who shot her husband. She forgave him. That is an example we should follow.
For more, let's bring in Brian Steinberg. He is senior TV editor at Variety. He's been joining us to follow this entire saga. Brian, good morning. Thank you for being here again today. I just want to start with your overall thoughts here about Kimmel's opening monologue, how he handled it.
Yeah, I thought he threaded the needle. I mean, this is a very difficult moment on stage. He could have had to apologized, but I think he balanced the emotion of the moment, pointing out what he had done and also pointing out why he should be free to say what he wants.
Is there anything you wish he would have done differently or said differently?
No, I think it was pretty masterful. I mean, this is a high pressure moment for any Hollywood person, and he kind of got on stage. He clearly emotional. I mean, he didn't hide the fact that he had been affected by it himself, and kind of took umbrage with the idea that people were assigning blame to him for certain things he thought that were not with reason. I thought he did a pretty good job. It was emotional, striking, but also humorous.
Brian, not every ABC station carried Kimmel's return, something he referenced there. Nexstar and Sinclair, they both have these pending deals, this awaiting FCC approval. They're continuing to preempt the show. Do you think there will be a point where they bring it back? Did you hear anything to persuade them last night? How do you see that playing out?
I thought he kind of made himself a human being. This is what happened. This is why I think about it. This is why it happened. I don't know how long Nexstar and Sinclair can preempt. I mean, certainly they can do that. Disney might have the right at some point to take the show to another station in the market. I think they will probably have to see what kind of ratings have resulted when they take Kimmel off the air and have other things like repeats or local news. We'll have to see what it nets out. But I mean, economics will probably drive most of these decisions, I suspect.
President Trump has already criticized the show's return, suggested on social media he may potentially take legal action against the network. I mean, have we seen this level of just pressure against a late-night comedian, or in this case, all late-night comedians before, or is this new territory for America?
Well, look, I mean, I don't know if a president has sued a company over a late-night joke, but certainly we've seen in the past several high-pressure moments where comedians, late-night comedians, made remarks that did not land well and caused problems. Samantha Bee, a few years ago, made a remark about Ivana Trump, and it caused some problems with the advertisers. David Letterman had a feud with Sarah Palin for a week and had to kind of apologize and admit the joke didn't land so well. Bill Maher famously, got off of ABC because of a remark he made about the 9/11 terrorist attacks. It didn't land well. So there have been examples of the hosts, either whether they mean it or not, the joke doesn't go out so great and people are offended. They're supposed to be all things to all people on a broadcast network, even a cable network. And sometimes, humor doesn't always go that way.
Brian, let's talk about Bob Iger in all of this. The leader of Disney, presumably making the decision to suspend the show, but then also to bring it back. I imagine heavily involved in every discussion that took place over the course of this. What do you make of this kind of piece of his legacy here and how he handled both that suspension decision and then the manner in which Jimmy Kimmel was brought back?
Look, it's high-pressure stuff. I think Iger felt that the temperature had to be cooled down for a while after last week. In the world of social media, the ability to kind of control the conversation is not in the media company's hand any longer. So I think they felt, let's take it off the air, let's chill out for a minute, and then let's figure out how to kind of get back on the air and figure things out. Now, they still have to navigate the affiliate problems. Were there any advertiser backouts because of the remarks? I don't think the story's over yet, but I feel like, I think he took the cautious way out and back in. And I think but nonetheless, the show's back on the air. I think Disney's taking a stand that, it's our decision, not the government's. That's what people hear. The people will decide, and they're going to probably stick with that for now.
Is the hardest part for ABC and Iger what's ahead? Because if the president does, say, file a lawsuit, I think most experts would agree ABC would probably win that. It's just a matter of waiting it out, of knowing maybe deals won't get approved. I mean, is that sort of this next phase perhaps the most important here?
It probably is. Let's see what happens. Disney has several matters, including an ESPN deal to have the NFL invest in the network. Looming that will require some regulatory review. Nexstar and Sinclair may have matters in front of the government as well. So it's a matter of, I think, taking a stand. You know, Disney already paid Trump $15-16 million for a remark about that George Stephanopoulos made that many legal experts thought was pretty flimsy. I guess that wasn't enough. And I think the Irish have to decide how much more are we going to spend, you know, kowtowing to this stuff when we're in the right. That's his decision to make.
All right, Brian, thank you for joining us throughout this whole thing.
Thank you.
Former Vice President Kamala Harris is pulling back the curtain on her whirlwind 107-day presidential campaign last year. She's out with a new book that reveals new details about the days leading up to that top-of-the-ticket switch. That includes her reflections on former President Biden's decision to drop out of the race so close to Election Day. NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has the details.
As Democrats look to the next election, it's the last one in the spotlight, with Kamala Harris detailing and in some instances relitigating her 107-day presidential campaign last fall.
We just didn't have enough time.
The former vice president reveals then President Biden first raised with her the possibility he might drop out nearly a week before he actually did, on July 15th, 2 days after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Harris says the mantra at the White House: "It's Joe and Jill's decision," writing, "Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness." Now, she herself is accepting some of that blame.
I realize that I have and had a certain responsibility that I should have followed through on, which is, and so when I talk about the recklessness, as much as anything, I'm talking about myself.
For her own running mate, Harris ultimately chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. But her first choice, she says, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who's openly gay. "He would have been an ideal partner if I were a straight white man," she writes. "But we were already asking a lot of America."
It wasn't about any prejudice on my part, but
that
we had such a
Yeah.
short period of time, and the stakes were so high.
Buttigieg responding.
I just believe in giving Americans more credit than that.
The former vice president has not ruled out another run in 2028, saying only that right now it is not her focus. Back to you.
Thank you, Hallie.
One of the strongest typhoons this year is battering Hong Kong and southern China after leaving a trail of destruction across Asia. Deaths were reported in both Taiwan and the Philippines, while scores of people remain missing following severe flooding. NBC News International correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer has the latest.
The strongest tropical storm on Earth this year is barreling across Asia, thrashing the Philippines with winds over 165 miles per hour, a super typhoon equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane. Heavy rain triggering landslides and flooding. The extent of the damage still unclear. The sheer size of Typhoon Ragasa captured from space, now making its way through the South China Sea toward Hong Kong and southern China, where tens of millions of people are on high alert. The storm center passing south of Taiwan, causing rough seas and deadly flooding. We looked up at the huge waves and thought, is this a tsunami, she says. Experts say typhoons are getting stronger here every year. Hong Kong has been brought to a standstill, with flights canceled and schools closed. Store shelves have been emptied by people stocking up on supplies. With Rakasa expected to make a second landfall in mainland China, authorities here moved to evacuate 400,000 people in Guangdong province alone and urged millions more to stay at home and brace for impact. Janice Mackey-Frayer, NBC News, Beijing.
Closer to home, more rain and storms from Texas to Kentucky today with some potential flooding to keep an eye on.
We've got Angie Lastman here in studio with your Morning News Now weather. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We need the umbrella, and we need to, of course, watch for some of the flooding and the stronger storms to develop later today. All of that on the table once again as we kind of track this same system that's leaving us unsettled so far this morning across a couple of spots. One of them in particular, Arkansas, where we do have this flash flood warning in effect. You can see a good batch of moisture working through there. We've got the heavy rain. We've got a whole lot of lightning associated with it. And it's not just there. We don't have any alerts up across parts of the Ohio and Tennessee Valley just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if those come down the line here as we get into the afternoon hours. Still watching this system move to the east. It's Texas to Kentucky that will watch for the stronger storms, not quite as severe as what we were dealing with yesterday. Ingredients not there for that, but still they could be strong and again have a whole lot of lightning and the potential for some heavy rain. That means the flood risk will be there for Ohio to Tennessee valleys today. Those are the spots to watch. And then we look ahead to tomorrow. tomorrow, and it's the East Coast where we see the focus, mainly talking about some heavy rain from the mid-Atlantic up through the Northeast, but we'll still see the potential for strong storms stretching from Boston to New Orleans for your day. As we look through today, I think specifically this afternoon, the flash flooding risk does include Charleston, Lexington, Bowling Green, down through Chattanooga, so keep that in mind. We'll see several rounds of some of these thunderstorms and on already saturated grounds, plus an additional couple of inches. No surprise if we see that flood watch come down the line here as we get through the day today. Otherwise, we've got to talk about the tropics because we've got two areas that we're keeping an eye on. We've got Invest 93L and Invest 94L. One thing to note right now, 94L is producing some of this rain already for Puerto Rico. So we'll see the heavy rain, the potential for gusty winds today. I think by the time we get through it, maybe 4 to 6 inches. So the flooding potential is there for Puerto Rico. But down the line, there's still a lot of uncertainty with these two systems. What we do know is we're likely going to see them form into possibly tropical depressions by the time the weekend ends, but maybe in the next couple of days. After that, we've got to watch it, guys. Like I said, a lot of uncertainty, still a lot of disagreement with the model, so we'll keep an eye on it.
Well, it's like robot names or something from Star Wars.
Yes.
Like 93L, R2-D2.
Scientists love to make things more confusing than they have to be, don't we?
We appreciate it. Welcome back. With the United Nations General Assembly in full swing here in New York, Israel's war in Gaza is one of the most pressing issues for world leaders. On Tuesday, a report released by a UN commission found that the Israeli government has shown a, quote, clear and consistent intent to establish permanent control over the Gaza Strip and to ensure a Jewish majority in the occupied West Bank.
This comes as President Trump called for an immediate end to the war in his speech to the UN General Assembly while condemning most global efforts to recognize a Palestinian state.
Instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now.
NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from Tel Aviv with the latest. Matt, good morning. So let's start with the president. Following his speech, he met with several leaders of Muslim-majority countries to talk about the situation in Gaza. What do we know about what came out of that meeting?
Well, we don't know anything really. And the fact is that we didn't hear any comments from President Trump after he left that meeting. We do know from Axios' reporting that President Trump had submitted something of a plan for the end game of the war in the Gaza Strip. Now, what that plan is, we don't know exactly, but it sounds as though President Trump, according to Axios, would like to see some of these Muslim and Arab countries come up with financing and with actual personnel to create sort of like an army or a security force that would be able to take up the burden of governing Gaza, at least temporarily, after the fighting ends there, after the Israeli troops withdraw. Now, that's a pretty tall order, and it's something that when we've been hearing from Arab diplomats here at NBC, they say things like, well, the Israelis broke it, and now they want us to buy it. This is the kind of attitude we're getting from Arab states. I don't know whether that was what Trump heard from these Arab and Muslim countries, but it sounds as though this was a meeting that might have been the first of several as diplomacy shifts from trying to negotiate a release of those remaining captives in the Gaza Strip to talking about the end of the fighting there, as it looks as though those negotiations to release the hostages are going nowhere.
Matt, also I want to ask you about that UN Commission's report Joe mentioned. Tell us more about what it lays out and how Israel's responding.
That's right. So this report is basically saying that the Israeli government is deliberately trying to create a Jewish majority in the West Bank. And for our viewers, the West Bank is distinct from the Gaza Strip. It's on the eastern side of Israel, on the western bank of the Jordan River. This is a part of the country where the majority of the Palestinian population that live within greater Israel, as it were, live. And this is a part of the country where there are lots of settlements by Jewish settlers who are trying to edge out some of these Palestinian residents. And that's one of the reasons why this report is identifying this problem. Also in the Gaza Strip, they're saying that the Israelis want to resettle the Gaza Strip. This is the same commission that just 8 days ago came out with a report saying that the Israelis had met 4 out of the 5 conditions to determine that they are, in fact, committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. So this is elaborating on that and explaining with some detail just what the Israeli plan is for the Palestinian territories.
Matt, one more thing we want to ask you about. There's another one of these flotillas carrying Palestinian activists and aid for Gaza. Organizers of that flotilla, which is near Greece, say they're being targeted. Is there any evidence they're providing? Do we know who's behind this?
Well, the Israelis haven't commented on this either way, but this is yet again another incident of, as you said, one of these flotillas. These happen not with some regularity, but they've happened over the years, and they were happening even before the October 7th attacks started off this latest round of fighting. Now, this global Samud flotilla, Samud is the Arabic word for perseverance, which you hear very often in the discourse here in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That's what they're called. They said that they have been harassed by about a dozen drones, that so far it's unclear where they're from. Of course, this flotilla says they're from Israel. That stands to reason, since we've seen the Israelis employ similar strategies in the past against some of these aid flotillas. The Israelis said that they had offered this boat to dock and unload its cargo, its aid, at the port of Ashkelon, and that this boat had refused. So now we're still waiting to hear what happens. It sounds as though they're on the high seas, plying water on their way to the Gaza Strip. It doesn't sound like this confrontation is over yet. Guys.
All right, Matt Bradley. Matt, thank you.
Thanks. One other international news, French aviation investigators are looking into a very close call after one passenger jet nearly landed on top of another jet getting ready to take off during a rainstorm. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has more on what happened.
It happened in Nice, France. Data from Flight Radar 24 shows a Nouvelle Air Airbus A320 arriving from Tunisia at 11:30 p.m., coming into land on the same runway where an EasyJet A320 was preparing to depart. The data shows the Nouvelle airplane passing just 10 to 20 feet above the EasyJet on the runway. Nouvelle Air aborted its approach and went around, landing a few minutes later. EasyJet canceled its flight. One passenger told French TV the pilot was sobbing. It was a bit infectious. Everyone burst into tears. 4 investigators have been assigned to the incident. The French transportation minister posting on X, a collision involving 2 aircraft from Nouvelle Air and EasyJet was narrowly avoided.
If these 2 Airbuses had in fact collided, it could have affected 350 to around 400 people. It would have been extremely serious.
The close call happened on runway 4 right, which was being used for departing flights out of Nice. Runway 4 left should have been used for arriving flights. In a statement, EasyJet tells NBC News the safety and well-being of our customers and crew is EasyJet's highest priority, and in line with procedures, we are fully cooperating with the safety investigation. The big question for investigators, were those Nouvelle Air pilots instructed to land on the wrong runway, or does this very close call in France come down to pilot error? Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you. Well, coming up, a startling study about the impacts of air quality on children.
Up next in our weekly check-in, the new research that shows pollution could be affecting kids' eyesight. Our Dr. Torres joins us next. This is Morning News Now.
We are back with our weekly medical checkup. This week, we're diving into research on how air pollution may be harming children's eyesight.
Plus, we're looking at a new study that found that even light drinking may raise your risk of dementia.
Let's bring in our friend NBC News medical contributor, Dr. John Torres, for more on these health headlines. Dr. Torres, always great to see you. Okay, let's start with this study on air pollution. So nearly half of Americans actually live with some unhealthy levels of air pollution. What a number that is. New research is showing, though, that it could be harming children's eyesight. What is this about, Doctor? Tell us about the study.
You know, this is interesting because we know that air pollution is bad for us, and we've known that for decades, and various things to try and get it under control. But what we didn't really know is how it affects kids, in particular their eyesight. And this was a huge study looking at children, and what it found is that children, particularly primary-age children, it affected their eyesight, giving them what's called myopia, that nearsightedness. And that might be one reason we're seeing more and more increase of that. And it did 3 specific things. Number one, because of the nitrous dioxide in the pollution, those fine particulates, it caused eye inflammation. On top of that, it also caused stress to the eyes, and the pollution causes reduced sunlight, because we know sunlight actually helps eyes develop. And so some of the things we're finding out from them here is that, that cleaner air is important to them, especially when they get to that school age, that primary ages of 5 to 10 or 11 years old. That can be extremely important. So what are the doctor's orders here? What can you do? Well, what the study found out is having things like air purifiers in school can certainly help go a long way here. So reducing that exposure is important. They also said some community type things like shutting down traffic, when people are dropping kids off and picking them up from school, having less traffic around schools, that can certainly help. On top of that, make sure your kids get eye exams to make sure that if they do have myopia, that they get that taken care of.
Next up, let's talk about some research that's mounting on the negative health effects of drinking alcohol. Now, the newest study finds that even light drinking might increase your risk for developing dementia. Dr. Torres, does the study even say there is a safe amount?
And Joe and Savannah, that's one of the things the study is saying is when it comes to dementia, there's no amount that doesn't increase that dementia risk. And this doesn't mean that drinking is going to give you dementia. What it means is when you do drink, that risk tends to go a little bit higher. We used to think, like you said, that light drinking might be a little bit healthy. Now we're finding out maybe not necessarily true, especially if you're at risk for these types of things. And the more you drink, the more you end up having these kinds of issues, the higher risk you are for these. So what are the doctor's orders here? Well, the doctor's orders are essentially just, moderate your alcohol. This is not a call to stop drinking alcohol. It's definitely moderate your alcohol. On top of that, when you are drinking alcohol, try those ones that have lower alcohol levels. And so the beers, the whiskeys, the cocktails, the ones that have lower, mocktails are very popular right now. So it might be an option as well. But the more you can moderate that, the better off you're going to be.
All right. Okay. Also, this last one, I mean, this is kind of confusing. It's this new study. It looks at how eating some produce can increase levels of pesticides in your body. But Dr. John, of course, fresh fruits, vegetables, they're crucial to a healthy diet. We talk about the Mediterranean diet, which is all this kind of stuff constantly. I mean, what should we look out for here? How do we kind of balance this, avoid higher pesticide levels, but get those fruits and veggies?
And, I said 1,000 times that you want to eat your fruits and vegetables. The more you can eat, the better. What this study is finding out that eating that produce can actually increase your pesticides levels because of the pesticides that are used to produce those ones. There are some that tend to have higher levels. And you can see on the graphic there, the strawberries, spinach, bell peppers, those tend to have higher levels of pesticides. And so looking at those and saying, should I go organic in those types of things might be the thing to do. There's other ones that have lower levels of pesticides, and those are the ones you want to aim for and saying, okay, if I have to save some money and I can't necessarily go organic, let me look at these lower pesticide level ones and see if I can buy those non-organic, save my organic money for the other ones. That can certainly help as well. So doctor's orders, switch to organic when you can. And if you can, and definitely moderate the ones that have high pesticide levels. And then if you can grow at home, if you have a home garden or even can put something out on your patio or your balcony and grow some vegetables there, all the better.
Great tips there. Always stuff to think about after this segment. Dr. John, thank you so much. Great to see you.
You bet.
Coming up, a Disney downer, the company raising prices for its popular streaming services for the 4th year in a row. What subscribers need to know.
And take me out to the bot game. We're going to show you the automated system that could change the game of baseball. Morning News Now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. All right, it's unfortunately, that time again. Disney Plus is hiking its subscription prices.
NBC's Savannah Henao has that and some other Wall Street headlines. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning. Yep, Disney is raising prices for Disney Plus for the 4th straight year. So starting October 21st, the ad-supported plan, that one will go up by $2 to $11.99 a month. The ad-free premium version, that one will rise $3 to $18.99 a month. The annual subscriptions, those will jump $30 to $189.99. Now, the bundle of Disney Plus with Hulu and ESPN Plus will also see a price hike. Disney has been steadily raising prices as part of efforts to stem losses. The streaming business, well, that turned a profit for the first time last year. Ford is offering lower interest rates on the F-150 pickup truck to borrowers with riskier credit scores. Now, the Wall Street Journal reports that the deal, which is available until the end of the month, well, it will let consumers with a weaker credit history pay the lower rate offered to those with stellar credit records. Now, Ford is courting these lower credit shoppers as it looks for a strong close to the 3rd quarter for its best-selling pickup. And Microsoft has started officially teasing its limited edition Windows XP themed Crocs. So The Verge reports they come with a 6-pack of Microsoft Jibbitz with nostalgic options such as the Internet Explorer icon and Clippy. Now, the Crocs had previously only been available for Microsoft employees, guys.
Okay, Clippy is like really doing it for me. It's a big throwback.
Right?
Yeah.
Clippy.
Wow. Cute. Funny. Yeah.
Thanks,
have to be like a real Microsoft fan.
Yeah, that is dedication to Microsoft.
Very specific.
All right.
Thank you.
Baseball fans, get ready for some major league changes. Robot umpires are stepping up to the plate. MLB's competition committee has approved the introduction of the automated ball strike system for the 2026 season.
Yeah, it means for the first time in history, baseball history, I should say, umpires will no longer have the final say on every pitch. You'll still see them out there making calls, but now teams can challenge 2 calls per game and get the robot's verdict.
Let's bring in friend of the show, host of Front Office Sports, Baker Machado. So clearly they're easing their way into what I have to assume is the inevitable, that eventually the robots will call the entire game. But explain how this is going to work right now. I mean, this is like the Supreme Court of balls and strikes.
So kind of. Look, this has been something that Major League Baseball has been working on for years. They've been testing this in the minor leagues for at least 5 years. We also got our first glimpse at it at the All-Star game just recently in Atlanta. Successfully, it was used as well. So as Savannah mentioned, pitchers, batters, and the catcher are the only ones that are able to call to get something reviewed. You can't, a manager or anybody else in the dugout can't do this, and this is only on balls and strikes. And this does not replace the actual umpires. They still will be behind home plate. But let's just say a pitcher or a catcher doesn't like the placement of where the pitch was. Let's just say one was called a ball when it should have been a strike. You could challenge that, and you only get 2 per game. And if you win one of those challenges, you get to retain that challenge for the rest of the game. Now, what's interesting is Major League Baseball actually said there was an over 50% success rate in this. Most of the time, it was always on calls that are 3 balls, 2 strikes, and a lot of times it went in the favor of one or the other successfully. And also, Rob Manfred, the commissioner, told us because of things like the pitch clock and all these sort of new technological advances that baseball has done, they felt comfortable being able to implement this system.
A big part of this is cutting down on players, right, and managers getting ejected for shouting, shouting matches. And that. I mean, is this going to cut that down?
Weirdly, this is so fascinating. 60% of ejections in Major League Baseball are due to balls and strikes. We're talking the umpires getting into fights with the managers. So if you've already removed that, you basically put this challenge system in there where now everybody knows what the exact ruling is, the Supreme Court, as you said. Now, all of a sudden, managers don't have to yell at the umpires, and they're staying in the game more often.
See, I like the human factor, but I was an umpire. I was a basketball referee for a very long time. But also, you see the U.S. Open,
well,
and you're kind of like, oh, that's kind of nice that we know the definitive answer. Just in general, when we see these changes like this, in the pitch clock you mentioned another one, how are fans feeling about it? Is it a good thing for baseball?
I think most fans were a little bit weary of it because, look, baseball, more than any other sport, has this era of pastime, of tradition, human era, as you mentioned. But these small changes from the pitch clock to designated hitters in both leagues have actually struck a great chord with fans that it's modernized the game. Younger viewers are now interested in the game as well, and things are going faster. They actually found with this new robo-ump system, it only added 15 seconds to the game. So this is not something like in the NFL where a challenge will take like minutes at a time. This is happening very quickly.
And Baker, quickly, are there lingering issues with this at all, or is everybody kind of feeling like it's good to go?
It wasn't unanimous. The Players Union didn't unanimously approve this, but most of them did. So most of them do feel like they are on board so far with all the changes.
I talked to an umpire a few years ago in the minor leagues, and he initially thought he'd hate it.
Yeah.
And he kind of liked it.
Yes,
so,
sure. And if anything, it probably gives them more definitive cover for things that they're saying was a ball or a strike.
All right. Baker, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Well, coming up, a heartwarming story about sports and community.
They give me friendship. They give me respect. They give me a reason to keep on moving any given day.
When we come back, we're going to introduce you to the 80-year-old softball player whose love for his team proves it is more than just a game. Stay with us. This is Morning News Now.
We're going to end this hour with an 80-year-old softball player whose late-night text to his teammates has gone viral.
Those texts are winning the hearts of millions online who read the sweet messages. Here's NBC's Camila Bernal.
In many ways, Nelson Bradbury is in a league of his own. He's 80, but instead of counting candles, he's counting on his teammates.
They give me friendship. They give me respect. They give me a reason to keep on moving any given day.
Nelson is the oldest member of an adult softball league team in Newfoundland, Canada. Last week, when he woke up at 2 a.m., the night before a big game, he texted the group, writing, "I really appreciate the way you guys treat me as an equal and not just an old fart," adding, "It's all of you who keep me going and give me the reason to get out of bed in the morning." When his teammates woke up, the messages started pouring in.
He thinks that, he needs us more than we need him. He's probably got it backwards because we'd probably be lost without him.
Sam Evans, a teammate's wife, then posted it on TikTok, getting millions of views.
To have men speak to other men this way, and an 80-year-old man at that, is just amazing.
Proving that in the game of life, playing with kindness always wins.
Nobody can buy what I've got.
Camila Bernal, NBC News.
Oh, my goodness. Ugh, friendship.
The sweet story there. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thank you for starting your Wednesday with us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, breaking his silence. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel returning to the airwaves overnight. He doled out a defiant and emotional rebuttal to his suspension from ABC over comments he made about Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter. We'll bring you all the highlights and the pushback from Washington that's keeping the issue of free speech front and center. Here in New York, President Trump shifting his tone on Ukraine as the world's most powerful leaders meet at the United Nations General Assembly. In a stunning reversal, the commander-in-chief now suggesting Ukraine can win back territory seized by Russia. But reaction from Ukraine's President Zelensky, and we'll dig into Mr. Trump's address to a global audience. Plus, the nearby security scare that has the Secret Service on high alert. Also this morning, are you looking to take your friendships further? Well, why not open a joint bank account? Why some money experts say the key to lasting bonds might be investing in more than just quality time. And later in the hour, we're introducing you to one viral pup living out his life one note at a time, proving to be music to the ears of thousands of adoring fans online. All right, let's begin this morning with Jimmy Kimmel's return to late night TV.
Yeah, the host was back on the air last night for the first time since ABC suspended his show nearly a week ago following comments he made about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz is in Hollywood with a look at Kimmel's first show back.
Well, hey there. Good morning to you. Jimmy Kimmel broke his silence here last night with a lengthy and heartfelt monologue where he addressed those comments that he made about Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin and also his subsequent suspension head on. And while many people are praising his return to the airwaves, President Trump is not one of them. He is now threatening potential legal action against ABC for bringing him back.
Overnight, Jimmy Kimmel making his return to late night.
I'm not sure who had a weirder 48 hours, me or the CEO of Tylenol.
The comedian choking up as he addressed comments he made about Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter that outraged many conservatives and led ABC to suspend his show for nearly a week following pressure from the head of the FCC.
I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
In his almost 30-minute-long remarks, Kimmel also delivering a searing defense of free speech.
The government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like is anti-American. That's anti-American.
Just before the show, President Trump slamming Kimmel's return, posting, "I can't believe ABC fake news gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back." The White House was told by ABC that his show was canceled. He then suggested potentially taking legal action against the network again. Kimmel firing back.
Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke.
Despite ABC bringing back the show, Jimmy Kimmel Live did not air on nearly 60 ABC affiliates nationwide. The owners of those stations, Sinclair and Nexstar, which both have pending business before the FCC, saying they won't run Kimmel because of his comments.
And audience members who were inside that taping told us that Jimmy Kimmel's wife and his parents were there, that at times his mother got emotional during his remarks and was tearing up. As for Nexstar and Sinclair, they have not said when, if ever, they plan to run Kimmel on their ABC stations again. Last night, Kimmel's show was pretty much immediately put on YouTube, which allowed people in those blacked out markets to watch it almost in real time. Back to you.
All right, Liz, thank you. Well, President Trump is back in Washington this morning after speaking at the United Nations General Assembly here in New York yesterday. But it was Mr. Trump's comments after his big speech that have gotten the most attention, with Mr. Trump suggesting on Truth Social that Ukraine could potentially win back all of its territory that was seized by Russia. That marks a dramatic shift by the president, who previously suggested Ukraine might need to give up some territory it had lost during the war. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haig joins us with the latest developments. Hey, Garrett, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Yeah, President Trump has long been a critic of the UN, so his combative tone in his speech to world leaders there came as really no surprise. No, the shock of the president's visit came later in that social media post, cheering Ukraine and taunting Russia's war effort and its economy. You know, what a White House official tells me is part of an effort to exert maximum public pressure to get the Kremlin to the negotiating table. President Trump at the United Nations shifting his stance on the war in Ukraine, following a sit-down with the country's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, writing on social media that he believes, quote, Ukraine, with the support of the EU, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form.
Let them get their land back.
Yep.
So we'll see how it all works out.
Just last month, President Trump suggesting Ukraine must make territorial concessions to Russia as part of a possible peace deal, a move Ukraine has opposed.
There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both.
Zelensky praising the president's reversal.
Are you surprised to hear that? A little bit. A little bit. He showed that he wants to support Ukraine to the very end.
With NATO members, including Poland and Estonia, reporting Russian drones and aircraft breaching their airspace in recent days, the president said those countries should respond with force.
Do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
Mr. President?
Just over a month after rolling out the red carpet for Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, Mr. Trump now stepping up his criticism of Russia.
It could be that Russia's a paper tiger.
And reflecting on the conflict.
I thought that was going to be the easiest one because of my relationship with Putin, but unfortunately that relationship didn't mean anything.
Earlier, the president's UN address highlighting deep divisions over America's role on the world stage. Mr. Trump at times combative, accusing world leaders of failing to crack down on immigration.
I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
The president also making light of malfunctions before and during his speech, with an escalator stopping the moment he and the First Lady stepped onto it, and the teleprompter failing just as he started to speak.
These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter.
The White House is now watching closely to see just how President Putin responds to President Trump's change in tone. In comments overnight, a Kremlin spokesperson insisted that Ukraine cannot win the war and that Russia's economy remains stable despite sanctions pressure. That spokesman dismissing concerns about the tone shift, Savannah, as the kind of thing that could change from day to day.
All right, Garrett, thank you so much.
For more on this, let's bring in Robert English, director of the USC School of International Relations. Robert, good to have you with us. We won't talk about the escalator or the teleprompter. Let's focus on the big issues here. It was just last month when President Trump suggested Ukraine must make territorial concessions to Russia as part of any potential peace deal between the countries. Now we see this shift. What do you think is behind that?
You know, they're fine words. They're certainly encouraging to Ukraine and all of its supporters. But until they're backed up by concrete deeds and different actions, a real shift in U.S. policy, it'll appear more like another off-the-cuff or unscripted remark by President Trump, of which we've seen so many. There's a lot of skepticism in the community of military experts and specialists on Central European affairs because we've seen this so many times, these vacillations, threats, deadlines, that have resulted in no real action. So guarded optimism, but we're waiting for real deeds to follow the words.
Overnight, the Kremlin said that any idea that Ukraine can recapture that territory is deeply mistaken. What do you think Russian President Vladimir Putin's next move will be?
Certainly the Kremlin's worried about this, 180-degree turn in the tone. From President Trump, from, soft on Russia, harsh on Ukraine, to the reverse. And they have to be concerned that it might be followed by concrete actions. And those might be these really tough secondary sanctions that the president has toyed with but backed away from. it could mean a resumption of really big American aid. Right now, that's pretty much ended, and the only American arms flowing to Ukraine are those that our NATO allies are purchasing. We have a commercial, not an ethical relationship with this conflict now. And it would also mean a larger commitment of American manpower and materiel, certainly for the security guarantees Ukraine would need after the war. Those have been lacking. But even in backing NATO in this current ramping up of confrontation over Russian aircraft and drones, we have done none of that. Again, it's been words but no deeds. And until we see those concrete actions I've outlined, there may be a lot of disappointment, but this doesn't amount to much.
When you talk about aircraft, one thing that made a lot of headlines was President Trump calling on NATO nations to shoot down Russian planes breaching their airspace. I mean, what are the fears here? Could the alliance get pulled further into this war? What would all this mean for the U.S. if things escalate like that?
That's exactly it. From the very beginning, there was talk of a no-fly zone, of NATO helping Ukraine patrol, literally a no-fly zone for Russian aviation. But that was shot down pretty quickly, and not only by the Biden administration, but by other leading NATO countries who were worried that it would bring them directly in conflict with Russia. And that doesn't seem to have changed. And frankly, President Trump seems to be confusing these recent incursions of Russian drones, especially into Poland, but also into Romanian territory. He was asked a question about aircraft, should they be shot down? And he just quickly said yes, without thinking it through, I'm afraid. Again, that concern about escalation on the part of some NATO countries remains. And I remind you that if NATO doesn't agree with unanimity on a new policy here, then it won't happen. That means that every NATO country has to be on board, even if a majority are in favor of a step like this. A small number who are worried about that escalation would be enough to stop it from a new policy from being implemented. So that would be very difficult for the West to do. Certainly if Trump pushed hard, that would make a difference. But again, so far, words have not been followed by deeds in this case.
Robert English, thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Well, the
You're
Secret
welcome.
Service says it dismantled a network of electronic devices with the potential to shut down New York City's cell phone network.
Agents discovered more than 300 co-located SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards at multiple locations. The Secret Service says the devices could also be used for other criminal activities. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Goss joins us with more on this. Steph, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. The Secret Service says this illegal network could have disrupted millions of calls and texts, even disabling the city's critical 911 emergency system. It's an unacceptable risk any time of year, but especially this week when foreign leaders from around the world are in town for the UN General Assembly. At 5 different locations within 35 miles of New York City, the Secret Service recently discovered 100,000 SIM cards capable of generating 30 million text messages per minute. The agency says it was all part of an illegal telecommunications network.
This network had the potential to disable cell phone towers and essentially shut down the cellular network in New York City.
The Secret Service, which is in charge of security for this week's United Nations General Assembly, says there was no known threat to the meeting for world leaders, including President Trump, but there was concern it could be a target.
Early analysis indicates cellular communications between foreign actors and individuals that are known to federal law enforcement.
An investigation into the illegal network triggered after a number of senior U.S. government officials were the victims of swatting earlier this year. Those are anonymous calls that reported false threats at their homes in order to trigger a large law enforcement response. The Secret Service did not name the officials targeted in those attacks.
I think we're going to see the government take a really hard look at, is there a foreign state actor?
These illegal networks called SIM farms are not new and are frequently used for a wide range of criminal activities, from generating fake social media accounts to sending out spam messages.
You can also have bad guys that are sending out texts that they want you to click, want you to turn over some credentials, want you to give them some money.
What are the chances there are more just like it operating not too far away right now?
I think it's over 100%, if that's even possible. These sorts of activities are happening all across the country.
The Secret Service is still investigating, but so far there have been no arrests. Stopping these SIM farms can be pretty difficult. They're easy and inexpensive to set up and often allow criminals, this is both foreign and domestic, to fly below the radar, guys.
Wow. Right. Thanks, Steph. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
In Washington, the countdown is on to avert a government shutdown again, but President Trump is not making it easy for Democratic leaders.
On Tuesday, the president abruptly canceled a meeting with White House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer over what he called, in a post to X, their, quote, unserious and ridiculous demands. The deadline to avoid a shutdown is September 30th.
NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Joe Nobles joins us now from Washington with more. Ryan, good morning. So what more has Trump said about the reason for canceling this meeting with the Democrats?
Well, there's an interesting backstory here, Joe, and that is that President Trump initially agreed to meet with the Democratic leaders, but then had a phone call with the Republican leaders in Congress, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader. And it was Thune and Johnson who convinced Trump that it wasn't worth meeting with the Democratic leaders, that they believed they had an offer on the table that was good enough to keep the government open, and that by entertaining the Democratic demands, that would lead to no positive outcome, because they just didn't believe that their Republican caucus would support any changes to the underlying bill. So that leaves us in the position that we're in now, that the two sides do not have an agreement. It requires at least some level of bipartisan support in order to keep the government open. And if they're not even talking, with the deadline fast approaching, it's becoming more and more likely that the government will shut down.
Ryan, one point of contention we know here for both parties is that insurance coverage under the Affordable Care Act is set to expire at the end of this year. Democrats want to extend that coverage in this government funding bill. Republicans are rejecting that request. Why is that such a sticking point for both parties?
Well, it actually could be the one issue that brings the two sides together, Savannah, and that's because there are a number of Republicans in frontline districts. These are districts that could swing either way in the midterms that are pleading with their leadership to extend these subsidies. They're fearful that if these subsidies expire at the end of the year, that their constituents could lose health care, and that could mean that many of them will vote against them in the upcoming election. So there could be a benefit to Republicans to making this part of the negotiation. But right now, Republican leadership just isn't interested in this. They believe it spends too much money. They've long been opposed to Obamacare in any form and fashion. So extending these subsidies would go against their previous policy positions. They also believe they have the upper hand here. Republicans are arguing that they have on the table what is described as a clean continuing resolution. This is basically just extending the current spending levels without any serious changes. And they just want 7 more weeks to negotiate a long-term spending package. They believe it's the Democrats that are being unreasonable, so there's no reason to come to the table and try and give them anything during this process.
So, Ryan, we're less than a week away. The clock is ticking. We've been here before. What happens next?
Well, the biggest problem that we're dealing with, Joe, is in addition to the fact that there aren't any plans for the two sides to meet, Congress isn't even in session. They are out the rest of this week for the Jewish holidays. They're not scheduled to be back in until after the funding deadline eclipses. So it would mean that something dramatic would have to happen between now and then in order to keep the government open. I know a lot of times I come on your program, I sound like the boy who cries wolf. I tell you that a shutdown is possible, and then they somehow find some sort of an agreement at the 11th hour. Right now, the possibility of a shutdown is as real as it's ever been, mainly because the two sides just aren't talking and they don't have a plan to fix this before the deadline comes.
Listen to Ryan. He knows his stuff. Ryan, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, there's new pushback this morning to the Trump administration's controversial claims linking the use of acetaminophen or Tylenol by pregnant women with an increased risk of autism in children. Health officials from the UK to Australia are rejecting the president's warnings to avoid the painkiller. His own administration now appears to be walking back those statements, leading to mounting confusion across the country. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is live at an OBGYN's office in Chicago with more. Hey, Maggie, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Yeah, and the doctor here telling me she has been blown away by the reaction, saying one patient asked her straight up, is there anything you're not telling us? At the same time, as you point out, one of the president's own top medical advisors appearing to counter his advice, only adding to that confusion for women and families across the country.
I was constantly taking Tylenol.
Could it be? I don't know.
Questions swarming social media about what's safe for pregnant moms.
They want to take away the one thing that we can have.
It follows President Trump's controversial claims Monday tying the use during pregnancy of acetaminophen, or its brand name Tylenol, to rising autism rates.
If you're pregnant, don't take Tylenol.
A warning some in his administration now appear to be walking back.
The message is not never take Tylenol. It's take Tylenol judiciously. Take it by talking with your doctor.
The president citing an analysis from New York's Mount Sinai, saying some studies found a potential link, but urging further research. Autism experts pointing to decades of research finding no causal link. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists says acetaminophen is one of few options available to treat pain and fever in pregnant women. Chicago OBGYN Dr. Samina Rahman says patients are confused.
What kinds of questions are patients asking you?
Well, is there new information? Like, is there something that you're not telling us?
Do you feel like there's an undercurrent now of maybe patients trusting even their own doctors less?
100%.
In the wake of this?
100%.
Lauren Rigardo took Tylenol for migraines during earlier pregnancies, adding her 3 kids have no signs of autism. She's now expecting baby number 4. Will you take Tylenol moving forward in this pregnancy, given this recent announcement?
Yes, I have little ones, and if I am suffering from a bad migraine while my husband's at work, what else am I supposed to do?
It should be pointed out as well, the maker of Tylenol also blasting the president's warning, saying in their words, there is no credible evidence linking acetaminophen to autism. So again, experts this morning stressing to talk to and trust your own doctor. Savannah.
All right, Maggie, thank you.
In Texas, Camp Mystic is planning to partially reopen next summer. This is the site where flooding killed 27 campers and counselors in early July. Some of the victims' families who successfully advocated for a new camp safety law in the state, they're not happy about this reopening. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us now with more. Priscilla, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, good morning. In an email to camp families shared with NBC News, Camp Mystic says that it will reopen its Cypress Lake campsite that is near on the Guadalupe River, not far from that Guadalupe River campsite where all of this happened. And tragically, those 27 campers and counselors lost their lives. That site is expected to remain closed. This morning, Camp Mystic in Texas announcing plans to reopen next summer. It comes after 27 young campers and counselors tragically died at the girls' summer camp on July 4th during catastrophic flooding in the region. Families of the victims receiving an email shared with NBC News by a source close to them that reads in part, "Our planning and procedures will comply with the requirements of the camp safety you bravely championed." Camp Mystic also writing it plans to build a memorial to capture the beauty, kindness, and grace of the girls that died. 9-year-old Lila Bonner was killed in the flood. Her father, Blake, telling the New York Times the families of the deceased Camp Mystic campers and counselors were not consulted about and did not approve this memorial. The mother of 8-year-old Seal Stewart, who is still missing, saying, quote, "Camp Mystic is pressing ahead with reopening, even if it means inviting girls to swim in the same river that may potentially still hold my daughter's body." The parents of 7 of the girls, known as Heavens 27, speaking to our Jenna Bush Hager earlier this month.
It became very, very clear that this wasn't an accident. This was complacency, and it is 100% preventable.
Through their efforts, the Texas governor has signed 3 new bills into law. Among the new rules, preventing cabins in dangerous areas of flood zones and requiring all camps in Texas to have updated emergency and evacuation plans. Ahead of the signing of the legislation, 9-year-old Molly DeWitt's parents telling Today the goal was to get the safety regulations in place before next summer.
What's being laid out in this bill should be the bare minimum for what these camps should be looking to implement.
And we reached out to Camp Mystic and many of the families of Heavens 27 for comment on all of this, but have not heard back. Joe?
All right, Priscilla, thank you.
Well, it is time now for weather. There are more showers and storms on the move today.
NBC meteorologist Angie Lassman's tracking the wet weather. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Grabbing the umbrella is going to be a good idea yet again today. We've got the potential for more unsettled weather, mainly in the form of some showers, some thunderstorms across a good chunk of the country today. So here's what we're dealing with right now. Not a whole lot of alerts out there, but we do have a flash flood warning that's in effect for southern portions of Arkansas, just over that border, just north of Shreveport. You can see kind of a robust cell working through that area. And this is just setting the stage for exactly what we'll be dealing with as we get into the afternoon hours. It's all part of this same system that left us unsettled yesterday, and we've got some of those same impacts on the table. So the one thing that's different are storms, not going to be quite as severe, but they could still be strong. So heads up for that, anywhere from Texas to Kentucky. And then across parts of the Ohio and Tennessee river valleys, that's where we'll see some really heavy rain, and we are concerned about flooding across that area. By tomorrow, most of this works to the East Coast. You'll see a good batch of moisture working across the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, parts of the Southeast, and again, the chance for some of those stronger storms from New Orleans to Boston for tomorrow. Today, this is the area we're specifically watching for flash flooding. It's a slight risk, so we'll see repeated rounds of some of these thunderstorms on already saturated grounds. We've got a couple of inches of rain that we could pick up between now and then, so I wouldn't be surprised if as the day goes on, we see a flood watch in some of these areas. But for right now, we do have that slight risk of flash flooding for Charleston, Lexington, Bowling Green, Chattanooga, but essentially the marginal risk extends farther to the south. So we'll be watching this area closely for potential impacts when it comes to flooding today. As we look to the Atlantic, we've got a couple of spots to keep track of. We got 2 tropical disturbances, so try to keep up. We've got this one, 93L, has a 90% chance of developing in the next couple of days. We've also got 94L. That one right now, good chance of developing too, but it is bringing some heavy rain to Puerto Rico. And that's going to be something that we'll deal with through the day today on top of the gusty winds. So impactful weather there. We'll see the potential of rain topping out with totals anywhere from 4 to 6 inches. Some flooding is going to be possible in that region. That's just for right now. And then we look ahead to these 2 systems down the line. So here's how the timeline goes. We'll likely see 93L become a system in the next couple of days. As we look to 94L, we'll likely see that become a system as we get into the weekend once it's near the Bahamas. So you can see those shaded areas, the pink and the red, of where we'll see those develop. And then beyond that, we're really going to be watching to see how these 2 potentially interact, if they don't interact with each other. And the models are not in great agreement at this point. This is the American model, and you can see we're kind of talking about a jumbled mess down the line. So essentially, to put it simply, we've still got a long way to go to see how it would impact us. Maybe we see some minor impacts, whereas we're talking, coastal erosion and things like that, guys. But this is going to be something that we'll see, that we watch well into next week.
If they meet, does that
dissipate
them?
Yeah. Well, it is an interesting meteorological effect where they kind of like come together, and this requires much more explanation from me, but the Fujiwara effect. So. Wikipedia that.
All right.
If I had more time, I would go on and explain it to you.
We'll have time. We'll
Deep tease.
Thanks, Angie. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Maybe you could spell it for us. Much more to come this hour of Morning News Now, including why some money experts say opening a joint bank account with your best friend could hold the key to a long-lasting bond.
First, after the break, billionaire Richard Branson using art to illustrate the horrors of the war in Ukraine. And it's showing right here in New York City. Our Chloe Malas has that exclusive conversation next.
Welcome back with the war in Ukraine, a major issue at the UN General Assembly. One billionaire is highlighting a devastating aspect of the conflict. In an exclusive interview, NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Malas sat down with Richard Branson to hear how he's using art to change minds and save lives.
It takes just 3 seconds for a landmine to detonate after it's stepped on. And it's the reason billionaire entrepreneur Richard Branson opened a new immersive installation, steps from New York City's Ukrainian village, asking visitors to imagine just 3 seconds to say goodbye.
The Russians have put down hundreds of thousands of mines, and if a young Ukrainian, 20-year-old steps on one of those mines, he'll hear it. It takes 3 seconds before it goes off. So they've got 3 seconds before they know they're going to either lose their life or their arms or their legs. and we wanted to draw attention to that.
Branson's Virgin Group collaborated with the Superhuman Center, a Ukrainian clinic that provides rehab and prosthetics for war victims, inviting visitors to record their own 3-second messages.
Love you all so much.
And put themselves in the shoes of people living through war, like Eddie Scott, a 29-year-old humanitarian aid worker who lost his arm and his leg in a drone strike, trying to evacuate people.
We just got rocked by this huge explosion, and it felt like someone just punched me in the back of the shoulder. I knew straight away that I'd been hit.
How has it been adjusting to your new way of living?
It's been a challenge. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done, learning to walk again.
Ukraine is the most landmine-contaminated country in the world, with roughly 30% of its territory filled, an area larger than Greece, according to the UN and the Ukrainian government. And since the war began, the Superhuman Center says 80,000 Ukrainians require prosthetics due to war-related injuries. And for Branson, it's not just personal, it's political.
We want to keep Ukraine on the front of news stories. We want our leaders to keep supporting Ukraine. Putin is not going to acknowledge that he made a mistake, and it's up to the West to help Ukraine get their territory back.
This an important moment for Branson, whose late friend Princess Diana made her famous walk through a minefield in Angola in 1997.
I used to be on Princess Diana's mining foundation where she was trying to get rid of mines. In those days, mines in Africa. I never dreamt that 30 years later I'd be talking about mines all over Europe.
In 2022, NBC News reported on local efforts to remove mines from Ukraine's farmland.
The farmers here, they say they keep finding bits of shrapnel.
Organizations on the ground are working to clean up some of these mines. President Zelensky, who is in New York this week to address the United Nations General Assembly, appointed Branson in 2023 to lead fundraising efforts to rebuild the war-torn country.
President Zelensky is here as Winston Churchill was here in America in the middle of the Second World War, asking for Americans and asking for Europeans for help.
Zelensky's address coming just 1 month after he met with President Trump at the White House, 3 days after Trump's failed peace talks with Russian President Putin in Alaska, who says he will not end the war until common sense prevails. Among his demands that Ukraine must renounce its aspirations to join NATO.
It was fine for Trump to try. It didn't work. And now Trump really must follow through with what he said he'll follow through on, and that is bring rigorous sanctions against Russia.
Do you believe that Putin wants global takeover?
I am absolutely certain if Putin could click his fingers and run the world, he would love nothing better.
Would you compare him to Hitler?
Yes, I mean, the way he's behaving is exactly as Hitler behaved at the beginning of the Second World War.
Even after such a traumatic experience, Scott says he's still going home to Ukraine.
I went from knowing nothing about Ukraine to it being my home, and now I've been living there 3 years. I have a Ukrainian goddaughter. It's home for me.
Branson and Scott hoping this temporary exhibit puts a face on the human cost of war and leaves a lasting impact.
Our thanks to Chloe Malas for that report. And Ukraine's President Zelensky is expected to address the UN General Assembly later today.
Now for what else is making international headlines. A super typhoon is leaving a path of destruction as it finally makes landfall in China.
NBC News International correspondent Claudia Lavanga joins us from Rome with our world news in 60 seconds. Hey, Claudia, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Well, that's right. At least 17 people were killed and another 32 were injured in Taiwan after the super typhoon Ragaza caused a lake burst there. Now, the typhoon, which carries hurricane-force winds, pounding rain and high seas, also caused widespread damage in Hong Kong, where entire neighborhoods were flooded. Ragaza is the strongest typhoon anywhere on Earth so far since the start of the year. To Europe now, where this morning investigators are looking into drone sightings that forced the temporary closure of Denmark's Copenhagen and Norway's Oslo airports. While it wasn't immediately clear who was behind Monday's flyover, Denmark's Prime Minister and NATO's Secretary General said that Russian involvement could not be ruled out. The Kremlin spokesperson said Russia had nothing to do with it. And let's end this tour of the world in Argentina, where scientists discovered a new dinosaur. They believe it was about 23 feet long, had huge and powerful claws, and was part of a group of dinosaurs called Megaraptorans, who lived up to around 70 million years ago. It's not clear how it died or how they went extinct, but they found a bone of an ancient crocodile pressed against its jaws, proof that at least before dying he had a delicious last meal, guys.
Yeah, if you like crocodiles, sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yep.
interesting.
Thanks, Claudio.
Thank you.
Coming up, it's an ancient anomaly that has perplexed both archaeologists and world travelers alike for literally thousands of years.
When we come back, the brand new novel that's diving into the mysteries of Stonehenge by reimagining the world's history. That's next on Morning News Now. Back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning. We're going to start with a special election in Arizona.
NBC News politics reporter Megan Leibowitz joins us now with more. Megan, good morning.
Hey, Joe and Savannah, good morning. Yeah, let's kick things off in Arizona, where voters went to the polls yesterday for a special congressional election. NBC News projected that Democrat Adelita Grijalva easily won her dad's old seat, which was open after Representative Raul Grijalva died in March. Now, it's a pretty deep blue congressional district, but it's important for Democrats because her win narrows the already slim margin in the House ahead of high-profile expected votes over things like government funding and files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go next to immigration, a major factor in the 2024 election. I want to take you to a new AP North poll, which found an uptick in U.S. adults who thought that legal immigration was beneficial for the economy. 58% of U.S. adults said they felt that a major benefit of legal immigration was the contribution to the economy. That's up from 42% in March of last year. The poll also asked people about President Trump's deportation efforts, and 49% said that the efforts have gone too far, while 35% said that they haven't gone far enough. Finally, let's go to Miami, which will eventually host President Trump's presidential library. Now, the location was chosen in part because it's close to a landmark called the Freedom Tower, which previously served as a center for Cuban refugees. The president's team also hopes that the library can be part of a larger project that includes a hotel, which would be a first for a presidential library. And that's a look at what is making news in politics this morning, guys.
All right, Megan, thank you.
Best-selling author Ken Follett has sold nearly 200 million copies of his novels worldwide. Well, now comes his new book, Circle of Days, which is set in Stonehenge, one of the most mysterious sites in the world. NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter met up with him to talk about the inspiration for his latest epic tale.
Good morning from a very windy Salisbury Plain. Of course, you will recognize Stonehenge behind me. It's one of the biggest mysteries in history. Who built it? How was it built? Well, Ken Follett dives into all of that in his new novel, imagining an entire world around this circle. Take a look.
The ruins of Stonehenge tower over the windswept plain. All these years later, still majestic, bewildering some 5,000 years after it was built. Even today, we don't know why.
Do you still get that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
52 colossal stones remain where there were once 80.
They are much bigger than I imagined.
Yeah. It's quite amazing. Just imagine trying to get that crossbar up there.
In his new novel, Circle of Days, British author Ken Follett tells the epic story of how Joya, a priestess, and Sept, a flint miner and one of the world's first engineers, built this great stone monument for eternity.
Joya is a sparky young woman, a bit of a rebel, and with a very strong will, and she's very persuasive. And that's how she motivates hundreds of people to come with her and find the biggest stone in the world.
This is where she spent most of her time.
Yes, once she grew up and joined the priestesses. Now, I've called them priestesses. They could have been priests, but I get fed up with people thinking everything in history was done by men.
His research is exhaustive, at times quite physical, at age 76, putting himself in Seft's shoes.
The best flint was underground.
Well, I've seen video of you crawling through a tunnel.
Yes, that's right. And as I was doing it, I was remembering that this tunnel was made in the Stone Age, and I had no idea how secure the roof was.
How much of the book is your imagination?
I would say normally the history in a historical novel is about 50% accurate history and 50% the author's imagination building on that. But in the Stone Age, it's more like 2080. There's so little known about the Stone Age that we have to imagine very much more, which is quite, you know, that's what I'm good at.
What Follett has imagined has baffled historians and archaeologists for centuries.
These stones were found 17 miles to the north in this direction. You can see, can't you? This plain is not flat.
Rolling hillsides.
It's rolling hillsides. Just imagine yourself holding this, 200 people holding these ropes with one of these stones, and they're dragging them. It must have been the hardest work in the world. Imagine trying to get the tops of the uprights level so that you can put a lintel on top.
But with no wheel, no modern tools, life in the Stone Age was primitive. Historians can agree on that much. But why was it built?
They knew when it was Midsummer Day and Midwinter Day. And one theory is, and it's only a theory, that Stonehenge was used as a calendar.
Why this story?
Well, I love stories about ordinary people who do something extraordinary.
Don't you wonder if they knew at the time that this would outlive, you know, centuries and centuries and centuries?
I feel sure that's what they aimed at. After all, why make it so sturdy, so big, so fantastic, if you didn't want it to last until the Day of Judgment?
Guys, it is awe-inspiring from every single angle. This is my first time here. It's been amazing. And Ken bases the drama, the love, the conflict that makes this such a page-turner all on historical fact. Guys?
All right, Molly, thank you.
We are following some breaking news out of Texas. FBI agents are responding to an active shooter situation at an ICE facility in Dallas, where at least 3 people were injured early this morning. We're going to turn now to our Dallas affiliate for more coverage.
Of information yet, so we are going to hold off on reporting anything that we are hearing, but police at the scene, they also are just as in flux as we are. I tried asking one of them if they knew we were safe or not, or if the situation was safe, and he actually said he was not sure, and that they were still trying to figure out what was going on. So as you can see, you've got officers waving cars through. This is the height of rush hour for Dallas. We've got so many people trying to get into the downtown area just to start their day of work, and of course this is happening, so they're really trying to get people to clear out of this area. There's immense traffic backups, as I can see. That's happening on I-35 southbound. They're actually having people exit at Empire Central and keeping them from continuing any further, and then diverting them on some of these side roads, which is where we're at here. So we're a few blocks away from where this incident is happening, just over at the ICE facility located along Stemmons. We're also just getting word and some confirmation from the Dallas Sheriff's Department spokesperson. They're confirming that the Sheriff's Department has responded with Dallas police to reports of an active shooter at that ICE facility there on Stemmons. They could not confirm whether anyone has been injured. So that is something we're still trying to figure out at this time. This, of course, is happening as we've got some storms that are also rolling into this area. I can see them just in the distance behind my photographer here. So this is going to be a really dangerous situation, of course, as those storms come through with the officers out here. And then, of course, just not really knowing entirely what's going on. So we're going to stay out here. We know there's a media staging area that's been mentioned to us. We're going to head over there in just a few moments, so hopefully we can find out some more information for you. Laura, we're going to send it back to you.
All right, Alana, thank you. And again, if you are just joining us, this is an active police presence as a report of an active shooter at the ICE facility there at I-35 in Empire Central. You can see so many police cars that are there. We are being told, per a federal law enforcement source, FBI agents are en route, as well as you just heard Alana Quillen saying the Dallas County Sheriff's Office is also on the way. So this is going to be a multi-agent investigation as people try to figure out if people are okay, the safety of the community.
You are watching breaking news coverage of our NBC affiliate in Dallas. The FBI responding to an active shooter situation after 3 people were injured at an ICE facility there. We'll be back with the very latest after a short break.
We're back with a new trend that's going viral on TikTok. It's really like taking friendship to the next level.
Yeah, friendship bracelets perhaps are no longer the only symbol of the tightest bond with your BFF. That's in part thanks to a wave of friend groups creating a joint bank account, claiming this money-saving strategy has been a friendship saver.
For more on this, Elizabeth Moline, an assignment editor on NBC's National News Desk, joins us now. Elizabeth, good morning. So you wrote this article for NBCnews.com, and you mentioned how this is part of what's being called financial intimacy. I mean, I think most people tend to make financial decisions on their own, but when you are linking them together, that does seem intimate. Tell us where this came from.
Yeah, so actually one of the experts that I spoke with basically talked about how not only do most of us make financial decisions alone, but you don't think twice most of the time about making financial decisions with a partner, for example, or a significant other. This way, friendships can actually strengthen. And one of the women that I spoke with, actually, she and her friend use this as kind of a wager. So essentially, it's almost like a jar of sorts. She's training for a marathon. If she misses one of her long runs, for example, she has to put $5 into the account. So it's really a fun way to kind of, strengthen friendships and almost create sort of a game out of something that can kind of be scary and intimidating.
I understand that some people even use it as like a swear jar. I mean, what are the ways you're seeing people use it? And I guess the big question is, why are they doing this?
So for a lot of people, I think especially when they're planning for groups of friends, for example, planning for a trip or an experience, I think that there's a lot of stress that can come around, who pays who what at the end of the trip, especially if some people on the trip, I'm sure you've experienced this, as have I, have to lay out a large portion of money and are owed back at the end. People use various apps in order to figure this out. And I think when everybody's contributing the entire time, for example, one of the women I spoke with, she and her friends agreed that they're going to contribute $10 a week, and then they jointly agreed to up that amount to $20 eventually. So I think when everybody's contributing equally all along, it doesn't feel as stressful.
What are some of the things that could go wrong, though? I mean, this is not without complications, right? That you're all adding money, you have a joint account, that's how you're paying for things. What could go wrong?
Yeah, so a lot of the experts that I spoke with did point out some potential warnings. For example, everyone on the account would be jointly liable for any overdrafts or fees. If one of the people on the account has bad credit, for example, that could actually end up impacting everybody's credit. So I think that, it could always be risky entering into this kind of relationship financially with friends. I think the big thing is that the experts that I spoke to encourage everybody to agree ahead of time on the terms associated with the account. So whether that's a verbal conversation or in writing, what if somebody loses their job or for whatever reasons decides they don't want to contribute anymore? What would happen at that point?
Need a prenup.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation. Fun one.
Thank you.
Let's keep the money conversation going. While prices continue to soar, more U.S. consumers are turning to a nostalgic way to spice up their dinners. They're also saving some money. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung has more on a product that's helping to lend a helping hand to help families cut costs.
Hey there, it's the one-pan meal with a simple idea. Just add some ground beef, and in minutes, you've got cheeseburger macaroni or stroganoff. Hamburger Helper telling us sales are up big time as American families look for quicker meals at a lower price.
I can help.
It's the iconic pantry item over 50 years old.
It keeps your budget from getting out of hand.
Now seeing a resurgence.
I love Hamburger Helper. It's like my comfort food.
Hamburger Helper, the cost-effective solution to the hungered question.
What?
Huh?
For?
Oh no.
Dinner.
The New York Times featuring its sudden popularity, highlighting the economic pressures consumers are facing at the dinner table.
Let me show you how to feed 7 with 1 box of Hamburger Helper.
The cost of dining rising faster than the cost of groceries, and the price of ground beef specifically soaring almost 13% over the last year, leading consumers increasingly to the $2 Hamburger Helper mix for a hand. With Hamburger Helper sales up 14%, according to their parent company, Eagle Foods.
Families are still our core, but we're seeing a pretty significant increase in households that are buying Helper. And those are coming from young adults. They're coming from seniors, even college students who are looking for easy filling meals.
Other pantry staples seeing a change in the way consumers spend. Campbell's Soup, who told investors this month that shoppers were increasingly cooking at home and remain cautious and intentional with their spending. But it's not just the savings bringing customers back.
I'm going to keep Helper handy.
The brand has remained in the cultural zeitgeist, from National Lampoon's Cousin Eddie.
I don't know why they call this stuff Hamburger Helper. It does just fine by itself, huh? I like it better than Tuna Helper myself.
To today, with FX show The Bear's own Chef Sydney.
All you're gonna do is stir and just make sure everything is incorporated.
Inspiring a new generation to try their own Hamburger Helper recipes.
So I saw Sydney using onions and garlic in the show, so that's what I started with.
It's still part of that cultural fabric of the country, and it's resonating in a really big way. It's kind of America's meal of the moment as we've enhanced it and elevated what Helper is.
And Eagle Foods tells us Hamburger Helper's top sellers include cheeseburger macaroni and beef stroganoff. And since their launch a year ago, microwavable Helper cups have also had strong sales. They also have these breakfast items that have only been on shelves for a few weeks, but those results have also been strong, according to the company. Back to you.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. We're continuing to follow this breaking news out of Dallas.
That's right. FBI agents are responding to a shooting situation at an ICE facility there. We know at least 3 people were shot earlier this morning, according to an ICE spokesperson. And the suspect has died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. We're now going to return to our Dallas affiliate for more coverage.
Media staging facility. We're hoping to get some more information there. But as you can see here, a large police presence that, as Deborah said, started just after 7 o'clock this morning. And we're continuing to get new information in. But Alana described that scene as chaotic when she got to the scene there. So we will continue to follow this developing story. Breaking news again off of 35E Empire Central at that ICE detention facility.
We can take it. Dallas Police, Dallas Sheriff's Office are both there asking people to stay clear of this area as this investigation goes on. NBC5 will keep you updated on air and online.
Finally, this hour, we do want to bring you the story of a dog that found his way into the hearts of millions around the world through the joy he gets from his owner's piano music.
Yeah, but as NBC News correspondent Maya Eaglin found out, some difficult health news means Bradford is also teaching the people around him to make the most of every day.
It's that calm look of pure enjoyment. Those adorable squinting eyes. And that famous flop. There's no question about it. Bradford, the 13-year-old rescue dog, loves music.
When you see him flop, I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh.
The sweetest, oh. The magic behind the keys comes from Bradford's owner, Cara Baldus-Merriman, who's a full-time musician and piano teacher.
2021, I just set up my camera close to the keys, and I didn't realize it, but then he started closing his eyes and just seemed so soothed by the music. It just seems to bring a lot of people a chance to catch a breath, a timeline cleanse.
How many people have seen Bradford's videos?
I would say through TikTok and Instagram, YouTube, roughly 50 million people. As soon as I commented, she said all caps, "I love Bradford," and then the classic song from Pixar, Toy Story, "You've Got a Friend in Me." Randy Newman, who wrote it, reshared it.
You couldn't tell this today, but 12 months ago, Bradford's life was looking really different.
So they took an x-ray and saw a tumor on his spleen, and then we had to go the same night to get an emergency splenectomy. They tested it. He does have a very aggressive type of cancer, hemangiosarcoma. It's a blood cancer, and here he is. He's still here. They gave him 2 months, 2 to 6 months, and we're at 10 months or 11 months now.
Cara says fans helped fund his chemo treatment, sending in words of encouragement and even gifts for Bradford.
And we're happy to report he's doing so well. His red blood cells are normal, and I think it speaks to the power of music and the community that we have on Instagram.
Now, Bradford is taking everything one day at a time, enjoying his life at home with Cara and her husband, Dan, and even spends time with them at the studio, soaking up all the music while he still can.
So what does Bradford mean to you?
Bradford is a sweet little dog angel who has helped me just think about life in a lot of different ways, lean into the emotions, lead with kindness and love, staying in the moment.
Bradford's important reminder to us all, enjoying a moment for exactly what it is right now. Maya Eaglin, NBC News.
Living in the present. Gotta
Really
love that.
cute.
That's going to do it for this hour of morning news now.
Stay with us. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.